NEAT, the most important thing you might not have heard of, part 1. This video for me is probably one of the most important ones to watch and learn from throughout the whole entire course. NEAT is something that cannot be underestimated, and this is why I've split the video about NEAT into 2 parts so that you can really take in all the information coming your way and retain it. So NEAT. NEAT is short for non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Essentially, NEAT is any calories you burn through activity that isn't planned exercise, such as walking, standing, fidgeting, holding your posture, and speaking. And as you would have seen in a previous video about calories in versus calories out, NEAT has a huge part to play when it comes to the calories you burn on a day-to-day basis. And here's a table that you can look at that shows you roughly how many calories we burn during each of the listed activities. And one thing I'm going to draw focus to here especially is the difference between sitting motionless and sitting whilst fidgeting, which is a difference of 38 calories per hour, and therefore over the course of a workday that's about 300 calories. So desk workers get fidgeting. And this also carries through to standing, with a difference of 60 calories per hour between being motionless and fidgeting. And then there's walking, which produces the highest calorie burn altogether, and is also affected by the speed you walk at. People that have active jobs sort of luck out here in a way, because they'll always be on the move. Postmen, women for example, who clock up huge distances walking most days during their jobs. But active jobs are becoming rarer and rarer these days, which might go some way to explaining why we have such a big problem with obesity and overweightness across the world. And we often focus our attention and efforts on burning calories in 1 hour every 2 to 3 days, our exercise. But what about the huge impact of the remaining 23 hours? And this is a big thing for me, and those of you listening to this that train with me in person may have heard me say many times that when we exercise, we shouldn't overly focus on how many calories we burn during a session, because the reality is that 1 hour of exercise we do, even if it's 5 sessions a week, if we're lucky, we'd burn 300 to 500 calories at each of those sessions. And that's not really a whole lot for the amount of effort we have to put in to our sessions to get that return. But let me be clear, I'm definitely not saying don't exercise here. It's more about how we frame our exercise and what results we should expect to get from doing regular workouts. I always promote the message that exercise is so much more than just about how many calories we burn within a session. It's so much more than that. So, exercise is hugely important for so many reasons. The focus when you train should, in my opinion, be about how do we perform certain exercises better? Are we getting stronger? Are we building muscle and improving our confidence? The focus on how many calories burn should be directed more towards our NEAT levels and how active we are in general on a day-to-day basis. And I can't stress that enough. Too many trainers and therefore members of the public get too caught up in the whole how many calories did they burn during a workout rhetoric, which then often leads to them neglecting the important role NEAT plays when aiming to lose weight. Now, NEAT is the most adaptable and variable part of our energy expenditure. And what this means is that if you take 2 people who weigh the same, their individual calories out total at the end of each day can differ vastly because of their NEAT. The second point in this list is from a study on fidgeting, and what the study found is that some people burn up to 800 calories per day extra than non-fidgeters, which is quite something, and highlights the role of NEAT. So even if you're sitting down all day tapping your toes and shuffling around in your seat can genuinely help with your weight management. For some people, this does come more naturally than others though, and that's often reflected and seen in thinner people. This next point is an interesting one. When we diet, our body wants to lower expenditure. It doesn't know that you want to look good on your holiday, for example. Its only goal is survival. So your body will actually fight against you being in a calorie deficit. It essentially doesn't want you to be there. So as a result, your NEAT levels might reduce. So what can happen is that when you become more active, you can actually unconsciously often also end up eating more as a result. Because if you think about it, if we keep on dieting and we're always in a calorie deficit, we will eventually die. Which obviously, for the human race, is not a good thing if everybody is doing that. So our body will work against us, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, when we are dieting. So what can happen when we are dieting is we stand less, we walk less, and we even talk less because we're more lethargic. And finally, NEAT is the main difference between the elderly and the young when it comes to weight gain, because as people age, most people slow down because they stop working, there's no kids to run around after, and as a result, they move less. And in this graph here, the white bars are the young and the black bars are the elderly. We can see that the young spend far more time standing than the elderly do, and far less time sitting than the elderly do. And then if we look at the average walk times, the young average over 600 minutes a day compared to the elderly that average in the high 300s. And that's obviously also reflected in walking distances too. So as I said before, as we get older, we move less and we walk less, and often this is purely subconsciously as well. So if you want to better your chances of reducing your weight or not gaining weight, find as many ways possible to be as active as you can, as often as you can, to drive up your NEAT. And that concludes part 1 of the videos on NEAT. So I'll see you in part 2.